Did you know that there are 226,092 Germans in Kazakhstan? That's a lot of people. That's more than Greenland, Aruba, and Monaco combined. Why did all these Germans find themselves 3,000 miles away from Germany? What happened? What is happening? And why would I make such a video? This is Ben Llewellyn, and I'll tell you why in this video. The story of how all these Germans got to Kazakhstan actually begins with a woman, Catherine the Great, who... she didn't like Jews. This is Catherine the Great, who ruled from Poland to Canada in the second half of the 18th century, and her expanding empire had an economic problem due to there not being enough literate and educated people to fill the jobs needed for Russia to begin modernizing. And also, after wars with the Ottoman Empire, vast swathes of farmland lay barren in southern Russia, and Catherine sought to bring in more experienced German agricultural labor and give them the religious freedom they did not enjoy under the Prussians. Unless you were Jewish, Jews were not allowed to come. Over about 5 years, 27,000 of these Germans came, mainly from Hessen, where Frankfurt is located today. And these Germans, they settled in the lower Volga, near Saratov. 106 colonies were built between 1764 and 1767 alone. That's a lot of people coming in. They were promised freedoms such as religious, self-government, and economic privileges. But after Catherine the Great and her sickly son's brief reign, Alexander I shifted Russia into a more militaristic and socially conservative nationalist phase, eventually banning foreign teachers and restricting languages. Many of these Germans fled to America, Canada, Brazil, and Argentina. However, changes were coming to Russia. The socialists. On the 29th of October 1918, a decree of the Soviet government created a labor commune for the Volga Germans, with linguistic and cultural rights given to Germans, increased autonomy, and even promotion of German language speakers into management positions, and special status for the autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic of the Volga Germans. Wait, that sounds like it's going really good for them. I mean, what's wrong with that? The Bolsheviks of the October Revolution used this microstate within their Soviet sphere to create propaganda and push ideas of communism westward into culturally German lands. It wasn't just being nice. And over 4 generations or so, some of these Germans had worked hard and become quite wealthy. The communists rounded them up, and in some cases, executions or forced them into starvation. That's communism. Anyway, the moral here is that if you depend upon someone when it's politically expedient for them to protect you, to give you all of your rights and privileges, and for that to be the basis of your self-government, then when it's not politically expedient for them to do so, they'll take away all of your freedoms and even possibly declare you their enemy with you in their grip. And that is exactly what happened. The Nazis invaded, and oh look, we have all these Germans here. What shall we do with them? Nazi Germany invaded in 1941, and despite these people having been in Russia for 180 years, Stalin, fearing they could be German collaborators, abolished the autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic of the Volga Germans on the 28th of August, 1941. Hundreds of thousands were exiled to the Altai Mountains, the Urals, Siberia, and especially what is now Kazakhstan. And Germans were banned from the army and high posts and top-tier education. Nearly all of the military-age able males and some women were sent to Gulag slave labor camps. An entire system was built across the Soviet Union, from the far northeastern Arctic to the Caucasus, the Urals, and Kazakhstan. The communist turned anti-communist historian Robert Conquest estimates around 1.5 million of them, these Germans, died in the Gulag labor camps. I must note the population transfers. The Soviets, and especially under Stalin, devised a system of moving minority groups and linguistic groups and ethnic nationalities around the Soviet Union and splitting them up, often from their own families, to delude their influence and to remove political opponents. Estonians were sent to just across the water from Alaska. Tartars shifted up toward the Urals. The Volga Germans to Kazakhstan. This was brutal, and when these people arrived in these places, they often found slave camps awaiting them. As a result, the Volga Germans never returned to the Volga region in their old numbers, though a small trickle have returned. There are people who make this channel possible. Those of you who buy me a coffee, my Patreons, who are my golden believers, thank you very much. Even folks who simply leave a comment, subscribe, tap like, all of it helps. So please contribute how you wish to. Diolch. After mass deportation to Kazakhstan of those that survived, the German language and culture was put under forced assimilation into the Russian culture, Russification. German language and ethnic holidays were banned, as well as a ban on relocation, meaning you had been forced here at gunpoint, and if you try and leave, you will be deported to the far-flung Arctic to wither away in slave camps, or just executed. That's communism. Germans tried to create another autonomous German republic in the 1970s, but this did not benefit the Communist Party's political situation, with the Kazakh majority, and keeping their grip on power over them. Nothing came of the idea, and an attempt to rebuild the Volga Republic failed, because communists are not really good at organizing anything that's not rooted in hatred and envy of a group. By 1989, there were almost 1 million Germans in Kazakhstan. Nearly 6% of the population, and the story may have ended very differently if the Berlin Wall had not fallen and the Soviet system not collapsed under the sheer weight of its own lies and hypocrisy. The fall of the Soviet Union meant nearly 2 million Germans across Kazakhstan and Russia suddenly had the right under German law to return to Germany and acquire German citizenship. In 10 years, the Kazakh German population plummeted by 63%. I mean, what would you do? You and your family had been subjected for like 50 years to the most horrific regime imaginable on the planet and seen as traitors or possible enemy collaborators by it. Deported and dropped in the middle of Central Asia, and then one day you wake up and you've got a magic Willy Wonka ticket to Germany. And the German state will take care of everything when you arrive. What would you do? I mean, if those are your choices, I know exactly what I would do. Would you stay and hang out in poverty in Central Asia, with winter winds from death and barren farmland? Or would you go have a beer in Bavaria at Oktoberfest? Most German Kazakhs did exactly what I would have done. They went and had a beer at Oktoberfest at the expense of the German state, rather than stay on the empty, barren wastelands of Central Asia, rotting in poverty. But many were just having a laugh. They just ticked a box saying they were German, showed up, nobody could really prove otherwise, and they got everything. And eventually the German government's like, well, we kind of have to shut this thing down. So the right of return was pushed out. And since then, many of these Kazakh Germans, they moved to the Oblast of Kaliningrad, between Lithuania and Poland. As close as you can get, I guess. It's European. Maybe if no one's looking one night, you could canoe your way along the Baltic coast to Germany. Anyway, today there are around 1.3 million German Kazakhs. Germany. But in Kazakhstan itself today, most Germans are now non-religious and Russian-speaking. And the highest concentrations are only 11%. Meaning, in the future they'll probably just get absorbed into Kazakh culture entirely. But in the recent census, these Germans increased in number because Russia's a war-torn mess now and they can't go to Germany, so they're kind of staying there and having kids. So if they are growing, maybe they will continue, even if they are only just over 1% of Kazakhstan's population. So why did I make this video? I said I would tell you why. Africa's not one thing, is it? You've got East Africa with its ancient culture around the Gez language and the Ethiopian church and all that. And then the Mali empires to the west, the Zulus far to the south, who are as different to each other as Celts and Slavs and Basques and Finns and Greeks. But the point is, we have these layers too in European and Western culture. And that we too oft are too eager to split this into an oppressor-oppressed dynamic and say that all Western culture is evil, that we're the bad guys, when really, if we keep calling ourselves the bad guys, our Western culture is not going to stand, and I'm not going to stand for that. Germans in World War II, yes, they invaded Russia and did horrible things and drove people and many, many Jews to death camps. But Germans in Russia were oppressed themselves as well. They were sent to death camps. It's not clear-cut. It's not a black and white world. There are many colors between which make us richer. And I see out there on our streets, people are so obsessed with an ideological view of the world, taking the good in liberalism, which I consider myself a liberal in the Western sense, but exacerbating it into an extremist ideology that wants to acidize it and dilute our culture into petty groups fighting each other by declaring that the European Western culture is the oppressor. And that's just not true. We have a lot of instances where we are the good guys, even in the midst of the horrors of the Holocaust. So, I guess that's just something to think about. And diolch yn fawr iawn am wylio, thank you very much.